YouTube, so that at least you guys could access it. I will try my best to do that after class. Then I also have a staff meeting, right? Okay, good. So Chelsea at least has it recorded. All right, so we're starting. So we're going to talk about some software requirements. Really and truly, the previous stuff to this is also, it also talks generally about project management and communication processes and risk management. Those are good to read, but those are not entirely required for what we have to know for CAPE. All right, so this entire document, it's good general reading, but in terms of teaching, I'm really going to focus on just the parts that we need. Okay, so what is the requirements? What are the requirements? The requirements are essentially your features and functionalities of your target system. Requirements basically say what the expectation is from the user perspective, right? From the user perspective for the software. Requirements might be entirely obvious. So if it is that you have a student management system, of course, you know that some of the requirements would be for the system to be able to hold data on students, to be able to see what classes that the students are assigned to, and those kind of things. Those are requirements, but requirements might also be hidden, right? So there is some thought, and this is why this is the analysis stage. There is some thought that needs to go into finding your requirements. Okay, so we have essentially the requirements engineering process, which is where you have to develop and maintain requirement specification documents. So what are the documents that, or what are the processes that we go through that to be able to do our analysis, to be able to find our requirements? Okay. We have 4 processes: the feasibility study, right? Your requirement gathering, your software requirement specification, and your software requirement validation. Okay, so your feasibility study is essentially where you think about the product, and you go through whether or not the goal of a feasibility study is whether or not it even makes sense pursuing a particular project. Okay, so before you think it through, and again, a lot of what we do in computer science in general is what you do in your own life. Okay, it's what you do in your own life. When you have to think about doing something, or if you want to do a project on your own, you go through a bit of a feasibility study in your mind, and you see, okay, am I committing myself to pursuing this or not? Is it feasible? And part of feasibility is it feasible right now to pursue this? It's not to say that what you want to do is not feasible generally. It mightn't be feasible right now. So one of you, let's say for instance, Chanel, maybe Chanel wants to start a project where she builds like a little hydroponic gardening, kitchen garden setup. But the thing is, it's something she wants to do, but she has to think about the feasibility of doing it right now. If you give to that project, you're going to have to take from something else. So she might have computer science work to do. She might have Caribbean studies work to do. Is it feasible for her right now? Is this something that she should pursue? Maybe not. Maybe she can't. She just can't find the time to do it. Right? There are other factors that she might have to look at. So when we talk about the feasibility study, Okay, you want to come up with a rough idea about all the things that the software could do, and then an analyst does a study about whether or not that system and its functionalities are feasible to develop. So it really and truly needs the time. To the goal of the organization, right? We need to figure out whether this system could be developed, whether it could be maintained, whether we could pay for it, what does it bring value? Okay, does the technology exist for the feasibility study, right? Oops, sorry, zooming too much. Okay, and how much really and truly we could get out of it. So I'm just going to add a page in the middle here to talk a little more about the feasibility study. And in terms of feasibility, we have to consider, I normally tell students, when you're thinking about feasibility, you can consider these different aspects of it. E, E, L, O, and S. Right? So we have five different fronts on which we can consider feasibility. Right? It's called feasibility. Yeah. Feasibility. Right? Feasibility. Okay. So we have like technical feasibility. And what does technical feasibility mean? Technical feasibility explores how difficult would this be able to be able to implement. Does the technology to do this exist? And we could look at any project that existed within history, and you can see any project that existed within history, and you could see that that project only came about when it was technologically feasible to do so. Okay? I'm sure since the beginning of time, mankind has looked up at the sky and wondered, what is it like to step foot on the moon? I'm fairly certain that people would have wondered that even before planes existed. At that point, however, no matter how hard persons tried, they might have wanted to get to the moon, but it would not have been technically feasible for them to get to the moon because flight didn't exist and rockets didn't exist. So the rocket technology had to exist before you could even pursue a project of getting to the moon. So you would have had to have a smaller project first. You would have had to be able to have some sort of sustained flight, and you would have had to have, of course, an understanding of maybe we had the understanding of how far the moon was, and how long it would take, because astronomy has been around for thousands of years, and people understood maybe the distance of the Earth from the moon and whatnot, but there was no way of implementing technology that would have gotten us from the Earth to the moon until the time where it was actually implemented successfully. Okay, certain things had to exist. So when we say technical feasibility, right, we ask, does the technology exist to make this project worth pursuing? That's basically what we're asking there. Okay, does the technology exist to make this project worth pursuing? And if it doesn't, well, maybe we have to look at developing the technology or even learning the technology, because we might want to do it, but we don't even know if it doesn't exist. The next one is economic feasibility. Right? Economic feasibility. And what does this ask? Economic feasibility considers the cost. Okay? It considers the cost. Can we afford to implement this project? So that's the basic question behind it in terms of producing a feasibility report. Can you afford to implement this project? The technology might exist, but the cost to implement it is, it might be out of our reach. Okay? So, you know, a lot of times, we, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, and I do it a lot too, I would admit, a lot of times we go off on a rant and we kind of go, you know, well, how come this system so bad? Why these people can't afford to put in a better system? Or in this day and age, it have no computer system that could simplify this. But the thing is that there is a cost to developing this computer system, right? Nobody's developing the system for free. The software has to sit on servers, whether in the cloud or whether purchased by the organization. And of course, you have to have people whose job it would be to maintain this. Okay, so we might have the technology, even if it is something simple, right? But there is a cost. Things don't just happen just like that. And when you get into it, you have to think, okay, what is the cost of implementing and what is the cost of maintaining? And when you look at that cost, and you have to compare the value that you get, because the feasibility study is essentially kind of like a cost benefit document that you're producing here, right? You have to list out how much you invest in terms of time and money, and what you're getting out of it in terms of convenience, etc. And you know, sometimes you have to think about the not just the value, that the not financial value, but the value in terms of time saved, and the value in terms of you know, convenience for persons, and the ease of speeding up a process over dollars and cents sometimes too. And you will have to kind of put that against the economic cost of implementing a project. Everybody with me? And I mean, let me just see some hands if you're with me and you're not, you know, you haven't dozed back into your morning sleep yet. All right. Good. Okay. Seeing hands, right? Seeing hands in there. All right. Thank you. All right. So the next one is legal feasibility. And by the time this class done, I know how to spell feasibility. All right. Maybe yeah, Joshua, me too. I honestly had to drink some coffee this morning, so I'm good right now. But you know, I feel by the time the staff meeting start, I might crash. All right. Legal feasibility. Legal feasibility is essentially, or anybody want to tell me what they think it is? You know my favorite example with legal feasibility. Anybody want to contribute and say, well, what is legal feasibility? I talk plenty for technical and economic feasibility. Somebody contribute. What do you think legal feasibility is?
If the piece of software meets if it's legal to be done in whatever country or meets whatever laws.
Exactly, right? So the legal feasibility asks, is is this project um is this project, or let me see, does this project meet the legal requirements of um the place where it is being implemented? Okay. And a lot of people, I mean, for most projects, it might be yes. But my favorite example is Uber in Trinidad and Tobago. Uber was not meeting the legal requirements of Trinidad and Tobago. And so Uber, as a multinational organization, would have run eventually into legal problems operating in this country, right? Because the way that our works and transport law is implemented, it means that if you are working as a hired driver, you must be registered with the Ministry of Works and Transportation. But and I know that we do have our own culture with PH drivers, etc. But that is a local issue. But for an international company to come in and put software in place that runs afoul of the mechanism that MOWT put in place for taxi drivers to operate would have caused problems in the long run. And persons who was just looking for a little extra cash they were not going to go and get a taxi badge just to run Uber 3-4 times a month. Make sense? You'll see where that legal clash occurs, yes? In that instance.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, so does this project meet the legal requirement of the place where it is being implemented? Another legal feasibility issue we are seeing right now is that of cryptocurrency. China is adamant that they do not want the trading of any cryptocurrency in China right now. China banned cryptocurrency twice so far. Because the thing is, the way that cryptocurrency is, it does not exist as a means for being legal tender to be traded that is under the control of any central government. And, while it is that in other territories, cryptocurrencies could be traded but looked upon as what do you call it? More like stock rather than an actual currency, right? China doesn't want any of that at all. So really and truly, China is on a drive to ban cryptocurrency. England is kind of taking the perspective that they would allow cryptocurrency, but only if it is under the control, cryptocurrencies that have been granted control by the English Central Bank. So anything outside of that, they are looking at making those things possibly illegal, or they are going to treat it as stocks, right? And the securities, etc. department will deal with that. So this is where the legal feasibility, especially for these software products, come in, because cryptocurrency, the reality of it is that because of its untraceable nature, cryptocurrency can facilitate a lot of illegal activity. Now, cryptocurrency could also facilitate cheaper transfer of money across the globe. But you have to look at the pros and the cons. Okay? And we are in this period now where there's a lot of persons, a lot of territories that they are still trying to figure out whether or not for their specific territory, if cryptocurrency can really and truly, boost their economy, would it impact the economy, would it crash them in the long term? Should we have a central bank control cryptocurrency? If we do have a central bank control cryptocurrency, then that negates the purpose of having a that negates the purpose of having a cryptocurrency in the first place, because it's supposed to be not under the control of a central territory, right? Um, if it is that you do have a central bank control cryptocurrency, is it that these cryptocurrencies will be compatible to be traded for non-central bank control cryptocurrencies? And how do you deal with that? Okay. So in terms of legal feasibility, these issues come up with regard to software development. So is the project legal? Right? We have operational feasibility. And what is operational feasibility? Anybody? I kind of hinted at operational feasibility in the beginning when I spoke about technical feasibility.
Like
Operational feasibility.
uh like could it be done with your current resources? Like, oh, is that, I mean, no,
Oh,
operation, like,
yeah, you correct. You correct.
oh, okay.
Right. So your operational feasibility asks how much how much do we have to give to keep this running? Okay, and Ryan is correct. How can we, once implemented, how does the resources that we have keep this running? So how sustainable is this project? Right? So we could incorporate what Ryan said. We could say how sustainable is this project going to be when our current resources are taken into consideration. And so you could kind of ask yourself, what, like if you think in terms of you're buying a house, and let's say for instance you win a lottery, right? And I'm not encouraging anybody to play the lottery, yeah? But let's say for instance you win a lottery and you get $2 million, and you decide to buy a $1.8 million house, but you don't work. How operationally feasible is it for you to have a $1.8 million house when you'll be left with $200,000 after you buy the house, and you plan to live there and you don't work right now? Does that make sense? Or would it make more sense to buy a $1 million house and have another $1 million there so that you can maintain the house long term? That's kind of like operational feasibility. Do I have the resources to keep it going? I could get the house. I could get a nice house for $1.8 million. But then what might happen is things mightn't go as you want. An unforeseen event could occur and cut into that $200,000 you have there. And now you are just somewhat unemployed, or maybe you have a regular salary with a fancy house that needs its maintenance, and you don't have the resources to maintain it. So what will happen is that maybe after 2, 3, 5 years, you might have to sell the house because it's not operationally feasible. But if it is that you buy the $1 million house and you still have $1 million in the bank, over the next 5 years, maybe you have to spend $100,000, or over the next 10 years, you spend $100,000 in the upkeep of the house. You still have $900,000 that you could use to live on and invest and try and make more money off of. And over that 10-year period, you could learn how to manage that money. So you could actually end up with more. So sometimes with doing a feasibility study, you might look at a system that seems like it fixes all your immediate problems, but then when it comes to having to do maintenance down the road, and maintenance could be involving, well, how much server space this system requires. I could implement this system now, but now I have 300 users on the system. What happens when my system jumps to 3,000 users? What happens when my system jumps to 30,000 users? Right? So the operational feasibility part of the study might look at growth and the ability to manage that growth of your system. Okay? And the last one, S, anybody wants to guess what S is? What have we not spoken about in terms of thinking about feasibility yet? Anybody? Should I call a name?
I nominated.
Nominating, yeah.
I nominated Josiah.
Yeah, I think that's a good nomination.
So this one one is my nominate. That's allowed?
Yeah, that was always allowed. And now Ryan has immunity because he nominated somebody. Right. The S, let me give you the S actually relates to another T word. So, right. You can't think of it. Huh?
I don't know how that helps, but
I feel like Kalika wanted to say something. Kalika?
Software.
System.
Not system, Josiah. Kalika, I didn't hear you properly.
So I was gonna guess sustainable feasibility.
Well, sustainable kind of tied in with operational. Right? So the S is somebody has their hand up. Schedule, yes. So schedule is time, basically. Right? Who said it? I didn't even see. Who said it? Oh, Natalia. All right, thanks. Right? So we have schedule feasibility. And schedule feasibility deals with time. Schedule feasibility looks at the ability to get this project done. Can this project be finished by the time we need it? Okay? So it ties into time because it doesn't make sense that yes, we could do it, we could afford it. It is fine to be done in this country. It's something that we can maintain, but it is going to take a long time to produce. Okay? And the reality is that schedule feasibility has destroyed a lot of tech projects, because especially where the market is competitive. Right? Sometimes people don't even consider the schedule. Yeah, yes, Chelsea?
So I was gonna ask if it's possible that one of these can be overlooked if the majority is feasible.
Yes, yes, for sure. Right? Some people might say, okay, it depends on the degree of how infeasible it is, right? So in terms of taking it late, some people might say, okay, well, we would still take it late and make it work. You see schedule feasibility coming up, especially with the development of like video games. A lot of the times, video game companies might make promises that they really can't deliver on. So this game will be complete by this particular date. I think, something like that happened with Cyberpunk, and something like that also happened with
Yeah, so 4 years, like 4 or 5 years, I think.
for Cyberpunk to come out.
Yeah.
Well, you see, right? So yeah, and they always promising next 6 months, next 6 months. But it eventually come out. It had another one. Oh God, I can't even remember. I think there was one Doom game that took forever, like years upon years. People must be still waiting on it. Um, you know, it and then they also have to cut corners, right? Because sometimes these games initially, like I remember for No Man's Sky, we could say that they promised a little more than they could have delivered technically, because that game was supposed to be, like a procedural world and people interact and people discover, but it is a large universe. And when the game came out, it was sounding great. So you could explore on your own, but eventually interact with other people and see what other people did and do and plan it. And then when they delivered the game, it just was not within the time that they give themselves technically possible for them to implement it. I do believe they fixed that already now, but people were upset because they still charge full price for the game and the game was incomplete, like plenty video games are nowadays, right? People just want it immediately. But coming back to schedule feasibility, depending on the project, whether or not you make the time frame could, be critical. They could be critical. I mean, sometimes a delay could be tolerated. Other times a delay could damage you, right? I'm really trying to think of a scenario, real world scenario where a delay happened. The biggest thing that I could think of, but this is not really um schedule was a bit like the least of the problems actually, but schedule in terms of in terms of it, you could boil it down to schedule was like Microsoft's offering to the mobile OS services, right? And again, you had to consider all of the other factors with this. I don't know if you all ever remembered Windows Phone as an OS. Yes, no? You all ever interacted with it? I actually had a Windows Phone at one point in time. Right? The OS was cool, but really and truly, Microsoft allowed Android and and what was the iOS? Oh my God, I'm so anti-iOS. I can't even remember the name of the operating system, to saturate the market before they really gave any kind of real effort to the Windows operating system. And by that time, a lot of the developers had just focused on those two major operating systems for supporting their apps. Microsoft had a fringe amount of apps and really and truly not full support for even certain wireless technologies like Wi-Fi technologies. I remember my Windows Phone could not meet the configuration settings to connect to our school's network at a point in time, because it was just such a consumer device that they did not really have the consideration for connecting to a business configuration Wi-Fi, So that was frustrating. I mean, they never sent an update for it because less and less people started to buy that Windows Phone. So Josiah looks like he had one too, right? I mean, the phone was cool. The interface was simple, but I mean, to me, it was like the camera on it was really nice for the time. But that phone wasn't really all that. So we have that schedule feasibility. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna pause this is the feasibility study, more or less, right? This is the feasibility study, more or less. So we have the output of this phase being the feasibility study report, and it should give comments and recommendations about whether or not we should even pursue the project. Okay, I'm going to give us a break now. Anybody have any questions before I give the break or before I stop recording? this first part? I should have asked for questions and then say after the questions come and then say yeah let's take a break. I suppose everybody just want to get the break in now, right? So no, everybody's fine. Everybody's good.
Yes, sir, so far.
All right,
Yes,
good.
sir.
So I'm gonna stop it here.